Hey everyone, Selwyn here from WynnStrength. On today's quick training tip video, I wanted to talk about the 5 times that you actually want to use training to failure as a strategy. If you followed this channel for any period of time, you probably know that I'm not the biggest fan of training to failure. I don't think it should make up the bulk of people's program for most people. I think it's a very useful tool when used correctly and specifically. Other than that, my general feeling about training is that you should be training anywhere in that, RPE 7 to 9 range. So you're always kind of leaving 1 to 3 reps in the tank. That way you're not really overstressing the body. And that's really the reason why I'm not the biggest fan of training to failure, is just getting that balance between stress and recovery and being able to make gains week after week. So the first point number 1 is that training to failure is great for smaller muscle groups. So whether that be, biceps, triceps, calves, abs, those single, those smaller muscle groups are great to train to failure because it's really hard for those to affect a lot of other lifts. Now, triceps are probably one of the exceptions to that rule, because if you overhead press a lot and bench press a lot, training to failure with your triceps is probably going to lead to less optimal bench pressing and overhead pressing in the day or two following that. But if you can tailor your program so that you're training to failure your triceps maybe 3-4 days before you bench press and overhead press, or you train to failure after your bench press overhead press, then that's going to be a perfect way to utilize training to failure. The second time is unilateral work. So when you're working with dumbbells, like lunges, again, calves, any sort of like single arm pressing or pulling motion, those are going to be great to utilize training to failure models. And the reason for this is, just like before with the smaller muscle groups, we're training one side of the body, so it's harder for us to really overstress the body when we're training only one side and one muscle group, as it were. So a single arm dumbbell row is a great way to utilize training to failure, something like a croc row, where you just go heavy for as many reps as you possibly can. Form just goes out the window, you're just trying to pull that weight up off the ground. And that's a great way because it's really hard to overstress the back compared to, say, doing heavy T-bar rows or heavy barbell rows, where you're utilizing a lot more of the body and it's going to negatively affect future training sessions. So the next 2 times is more about your training style for that period of time. So hypertrophy phase training is going to be perfect and more suitable to training to failure, just because we're worried about volume and how many reps we can do, overall tonnage. And if you're ever doubtful about RPE, and if you hit 8 or 9 or 10, training to failure, even if you're not true muscular failure, you're going to be at 9 at the very least, because you mentally can't push anymore. So that's going to at least push you definitely above 9 and into that useful rep range. Although the studies show that anything kind of above 7 RPE is going to be effective, provided you train properly. But nevertheless, hypertrophy style training is going to be your perfect partner with training to failure. And next to that is going to be Metcon training, or metabolic conditioning training, where you're just doing a lot of reps to build up your cardiovascular training. Gpp training, training like that is going to be another perfect pairing with training to failure, because you're really not worried about lifting the weight, you're worried about moving that weight as many times as you can in order to drive metabolic conditioning and get that cardiovascular system working, kind of like running. We're not pushing super heavy weights, so the safety isn't that big of a concern. If you're only lifting 85 pounds when you can only squat 300 pounds, then it's going to be really easy to mitigate any safety concerns regarding dropping that weight. And finally, one of the weirder ones that I would say is a perfect time to use training to failure is when you're not looking forward to going to the gym and you're really tired or really fatigued going into that gym. And while it might sound counterintuitive, that fatigue and that lack of mental excitement is going to act as a rate limiter for your training. So even though you're training to what you perceive as failure that day, your body is probably capable of a lot more if you had proper sleep, less stress, better nutritional habits before that workout. So if you're working on 2 hours of sleep and a really stressful day, that's going to be the perfect time to train to your mental point of failure, because your body's capable of more, but you're actually able to push that body as far as you mentally can that day, which gives us slightly better training results. And if you look at like abs in terms of absolute weights and absolute volume, it's going to be a lot less than you normally can. So you're not really physically overtaxing the body. What you're doing is bringing that body up to as the minimum amount of work kind of that your body can kind of tolerate for recovering for the next couple of days. So hopefully those 5 tips kind of help you around structuring your training, give you a couple more tactics and strategies that you can implement when you feel the need is necessary, because not everything can be used all the time, but everything can be used at some time. This has been Selwyn from WynnStrength, and remember, a better life through strength.